Hey guys, Stock Saturday, and very surprisingly, I've had a green week, considering the crypto prices are fairly well down, and a large part of my portfolio obviously is in the miners. But yeah, not too bad. About 4.6% up, excluding the deposits. At some point, I'll have to sort of include the deposits in that number. I think it's 6.4%. The total portfolio is up from last week, excluding the deposit. And yeah, compared to the S&P, that is 1.3%, 1.43% up over the last week. And Nasdaq has done quite a bit better, 2.9%. So everyone's happy. That is sort of partly news driven towards the end of the week. Sort of had a holiday and a half day for the US, and then some positive news sort of come out at the end of the week, which I will come back to. So the Q2 earnings will be a little way away, but we have operational updates for the miners. So CleanSpark first, June 2024 mining update. They mined 445 Bitcoin, so we're sort of back to, after the halving, fairly steady numbers. And total Bitcoins held 6,591. So obviously they're keeping almost all of it. They sold 8 Bitcoin just for sort of general operating things that they need to. Some people, from what I understand, some employees will say they want their pay in cash rather than shares. I think a lot of people sort of take a fairly large amount of stock-based compensation, so that's the reason, part of the reason that increases, aside from the dilution. And yeah, month-end efficiency come down to 22.31 and hash rate at 20.4 exahash. So pretty good, as they say, surpassing 20 exahash. Considering the market cap, I don't think that's sort of massive target to be making or sort of claiming. And their path to 50 exahash remains on track. Obviously, they're going to need a fair amount of dilution, I would still think, to get there. But yeah, they're announcing their acquisition of Grid, so that is going to provide a little bit of dilution, but gives them sort of land and power, from what I understand, to grow quite a bit. And I covered in individual news the acquisition of the sites in Georgia and the Dalton expansion, only a small site, but yeah, they're carrying on with their build. Concrete pours for both slabs have been completed. I would kind of rather they just probably paid up a little bit over the odds and sort of bought something ready-made, or sort of tried to acquire a small miner maybe, rather than sort of be pouring new slabs for new buildings, that are likely going to come online sort of next year, where we should hopefully be well into the bull run. So moving on to Riot platforms, I was almost more interested in Riot than CleanSpark, really, because we sort of know where CleanSpark are, whereas Riot are going through a fairly big change. So they did 255 Bitcoin, which is up 40 from May, so that's pretty good. More power coming online. They have 14.7 exahash at the Rockdale facility, upgrading some of those miners, and 7.3 now at Corsicana, up from 3.1 last month. The average, I don't know why they do average operating hash rate rather than sort of month end, because this sort of, muddies the waters a little bit. They're sort of at 3.6 average operating at Corsicana, but obviously they're expanding quite a lot there. And average at Rockdale is 7.4, so it's looking like that should be higher at the end of the month. So yeah, we'll see more over the next couple of months. They've sort of still got their expansion plans. 22 exahash, they're saying actual for the end of Q2, 27 exahash in 3 months, but that is going to be more a function of operating hash rate increasing rather than deployed hash rate. Deployed is only going up 5 and operating should be increasing 16. So we'll see. And Bitcoin held up to 9,334. So admittedly, we've had a bit of a drop in Bitcoin, so that is possibly even worth less than what the 9,084 was last month. So yeah, we have to sort of power through this downturn as things are still looking up for the rest of the year and certainly into next year. And Core Scientific, much smaller position for me, only in options. I don't hold any of the stock itself. But yeah, they've kind of got away from me. I'm not sort of really looking to buy any more. But they had done 430 Bitcoin in June. They're sort of fairly steady amount of power. They're not really growing at all, other than sort of lending their sites to the AI side now. Obviously, they've got their CoreWeave deal, which they recently expanded from 200 megawatts to 270. So it's now a $4.7 billion contract over 12 years. I think, people get a little bit excited by the big number, but remember it is 12 years. We're sort of looking at probably 350 million for the first year, I guess now. So yeah, not too bad, and the sort of Bitcoin mined is fairly steady. They have dropped 1 exahash off their self-mining because they are moving some miners to make space for the AI. So they're moving 1 exahash worth of miners into different data centers. This isn't going permanently. So hopefully that should be back up to, I guess, 20.4. I don't think they're buying much in the way of new miners. So yeah, they're not bringing their efficiency down. They're at 23.61. That is down because I guess they're just they're moving less efficient miners. So that could even be back up to 24.23 when they get re-energized. So yeah, a little bit of hosting Bitcoin as well. Hosting Bitcoin is down. Guessing that is sort of unprofitable miners that people are still hosting, or maybe not unprofitable, but lower efficiency miners from other clients. And they have no hodl, of course, because they still have to sell everything. So they actually sold 479 Bitcoin and only mined 430. So whether that was sort of a little bit of a backlog from previously mined Bitcoin. So away from crypto, I thought this was an interesting sort of increase in Stellantis' investment into Archer. So they're looking to make electric helicopters, you could almost say, eVTOLs, so vertical takeoff and landing planes, basically. They're looking to sort of have these as short flights. They sort of highlight. So, well, yeah, interesting sort of look at them building prototypes and sort of potential models, and they sort of highlight the very, very short runs that they're looking to do. Sort of Manhattan to Newark Airport takes, an hour by public transport or cars, and they can potentially do it in 9 minutes with a helicopter. And sort of Abu Dhabi, long trips across to Palm Islands and that sort of thing in like 20 minutes. So yeah, going into the air rather than clogging up the streets. So Stellantis made an initial investment of, I believe, $110 million dollars worth of, I think, stock into Archer, and from the looks of it, in March they bought another 8.3 million shares because the stock is public. It's not been doing too well, obviously, because it's a pre-revenue company, as they call it, just building. They're not selling anything at the moment, and obviously posting a hell of a lot of expenses. But yeah, Stellantis bought another 8.3 million shares in March, and they've just invested, I think it was another 55 million in a funding round. Obviously, they, need to get their cash from funding like this because they don't have any revenue. But yeah, that's quite a large chunk of the company now. So Stellantis are believing in flying cars, as they call it. I wouldn't call that a car. If anybody says that's a car, I think you're mad. That is an electric plane or electric helicopter, however you want to call it. So, noting what has been pushing the portfolio in the last week is gold and silver, really. I was kind of waiting for a little bit of another down move in gold, sort of below the $2,300 level, and sort of deploy my reasonably large amount of cash that I put into Interactive Brokers, and that hasn't happened. It sort of seemed to have a bit of a local bottom at 2,300 and has sort of risen in stair steps since to sort of 23.30 up to 23.60 and now up to 23.90. So sort of fairly clean $30 moves, and it's sort of got away from me a little bit. The stocks are up quite a bit. Similarly on the silver side, over sort of the last month, it was sort of under 29 and sort of bottomed out there. It's gone to 30, 31, and now just over 31. Although gold sort of really has been stealing the show. So we'll have to see. So I mentioned the economic news. There was a fair bit this week, some sort of less important bits on Monday. Tuesday you had the June CPI provisional, which was sort of broadly as expected. Core for the year sort of stayed the same, where it's expected to drop slightly, but don't think that's anything too much. And remembering the ECB have already started their cutting cycle, so yeah, whether that gets sort of put on ice for a little bit because of that, who knows. And then Wednesday you had sort of jobless claims continuing to tick up. Don't think they're too happy with that. And then the ISM numbers were quite low. The non-manufacturing PMI, the sort of bellwether for the US economy, being a more services economy, expected to be 52.6, still positive, slightly down from 53.8, and was 48.8. So, as I will say, under 50 generally means contraction, and yeah, that's not very good. Employment down to 46.1, but prices sort of slightly worse than expected, but still way above 50. GDP now sort of down to 1.5%. And then Friday, the non-farm payrolls was slightly higher than expected, but not really too high. 218,000. Yeah, you've had revisions from the previous 2 months down quite substantially. I think they were saying over 100,000 jobs revised downwards from previous months. So a very small beat of 15,000 this month doesn't sort of make up for that, basically. And a lot of this was government sector as well. You had 160,000 expected in the private sector. That was 136. So it's just government spending money, basically. And employment rose to 4.1%. So that bottomed out at 3.4% last year, I think it was. So up 0.7% from the bottom. A lot of people are seeing this as a sign that, Powell and the FOMC will see this as weakening data. Probably not cutting rates in July, but giving a reasonable indication that they're looking at September. And, they'll sort of come out and say, yes, the recent job data is looking weaker, and we have to focus on jobs, not just inflation. So yeah, that gave everyone a huge boost. So portfolio-wise, as I say, not a huge amount of change in the invest account. Broadcom sort of back up to 1,700. That was sort of just touching 1600 last week, so that's had a fairly good week. TSMC up to pretty much new highs, $184. That's 87% in the green now. Pretty happy with that. And Stellantis sort of slightly moving down, not too much. Vale still getting whacked. Be interesting to see their earnings sort of in the next month. On the ISA side, it's rather weird. CleanSpark is sort of down ever so slightly, even with Bitcoin being down to 56,000, I think, at the close. At the close of CleanSpark, obviously Bitcoin never closes. But yeah, it did go as low as 54,000, and yeah, the miners sort of took a bit of a hit, but fairly quickly recovered. And Riot is actually up sort of 4 or 5%, I think, on the week. Was sort of hovering around $9. Was sort of rough in pre-market, and sort of everyone else gets to sell their shares, although we can now on Trading212, but I haven't tried. Don't really want to test the liquidity in out of hours trading. But yeah, it's the gold and silver miners that are really hitting. Coeur mining up to $6.30, and Equinox, I was kind of looking to buy some more options if Equinox stock got sort of below $5 or sort of closer to $5. But yeah, that positive move in gold has put paid to that. Similarly on Interactive Brokers, 21.50 now on Pan American, where that was sort of 19, and KGHM back up to 152. That isn't dollars. I always leave that as dollars. I really should change that to Polish zloty, I think it is. And then the invest account is where a reasonable amount of this gain has come. So the sort of reporting on some of the options is a little bit all over the place, especially with illiquid stocks or illiquid options, certainly, on sort of smaller cap stocks like Himax. This does sort of wax and wane, but yeah, it's showing 21,700 at the moment, so that's a rather large profit, and Coeur Mining has sort of really powered ahead on this move. Overall, amongst all the options, about 450%. They are all sort of different expiries. Some are up sort of 600%, some 200-300. But yeah, as an overall position, looking very nice. Equinox obviously is the one that hasn't really moved quite as much. I was sort of buying a little bit higher than where it is now, and sort of it's gone into the green again, where that was sort of 11% down. CleanSpark sort of hasn't really moved at all. Core Scientific has, obviously on the back of the AI announcements, increasing the AI deal with CoreWeave, and sort of just coming out of bankruptcy, being a solid company again, presumably with no debt going forward, because it looks like all of their option sort of warrants will get triggered, and there's a large dilution, but they have no debt anymore and are sort of no longer bankrupt, looking soon to be reasonably profitable. So yeah, in fairly short time period, that's up 285%. So very happy with that. Fortuna sort of not looking all that good. These options are all my options, I think, on Fortuna are January this coming year, so they haven't got long to run. That's probably why they're not looking quite so good. We're sort of positive on gold and silver, obviously just gold for Fortuna, but yeah, I think it's not necessarily going to really rocket up by January. We're sort of expecting the next 18 months. And then Riot sort of didn't really get the chance to buy, sort of slightly lower as I was hoping. I might be just sort of penny pinching and should have bought, but we'll see. And then Desktop Metal, I just sort of ignore that. That was a bit of a punt that appears to have probably gone wrong, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter too much. But yeah, that's where we are at the moment. Still £6,000 of cash unspent. So I have to see what I do with that. So leave your thoughts in comments below, and like and subscribe. See you soon.